What's up? Welcome back to the Long Lens Podcast. This is the podcast where I try to answer questions from my filmmaking community so we can all learn and grow together. And sometimes I have guests on the pod. And today's guest I'm really stoked on. My buddy Chris Tellez is a professional photographer from Ontario, Canada, and he also is a filmmaker. He recently wrapped up his first documentary film. So me and Chris talk a little bit about his journey in the whole creative industry and what goes into making a documentary for the first time. So there's a lot of other good information in this episode. Hope you enjoy. And without any further ado, here's my conversation with Chris Tellez. All right. So Chris, thanks for joining me on the podcast today, man.
Yeah, man. Happy to be here.
Cool. Well, I got some softball questions for you first. And this is a little bit more like selfish because I know that you're into running. And so I just kind of wanted to ask you a couple of softball running questions. The first one is, what's your favorite running shoe?
Okay. I run mostly in Ultra. Do you know that brand?
Yeah.
Okay. So their whole thing is they're zero drop and they do natural like footbed shape. They did just introduce a 4 mil drop shoe, two different versions of it. One is like a trail shoe and one is a road shoe. And I really like that. So that is, what's it called? It's called the Ultra Experience Flow. And then there's also the Ultra Torin 8 that just came out. And those are like my go-to. I really like the zero drop thing. And it took me a while to get into those. But before that, I was running mostly in Saucony.
Okay.
And I was a big fan of the first two iterations of the Endorphin Speed were like amazing. I loved those shoes. And then, I don't know, they didn't really do it for me after that.
Well, I've been like switching around. I started running in Sauconys and then I switched to some Hokas, and they're just like very like the basics, you know, like the Hoka Clifton 7s were like my first Hokas. And then I switched back to Saucony, which I really loved the Saucony Ride series just as like the daily trainers. But then I'm currently running in some Brooks right now, which I really like. And I also have another pair of Hoka Aries. Yeah, I've been liking the Brooks. I've been liking the Brooks a lot, actually.
Yeah, which one? Which one do you have?
They're like the really basic ones. The Revel something, like the Revel 6s or something like that.
Okay, cool.
But they kind of almost feel like a trail shoe, but they're not really. Like they're still like a road shoe, but they have a little bit of traction to them, which I like. But
do you find, like, being where you are, do you find that you're doing a lot of mixed running, like a bit of trail and then like road and city running all kind of mixed in?
Yeah, like to actually go to downtown Portland is like a 20-minute drive for me. And then it's also like a 20-minute drive to get to like a trail to go run at. Right. So it's like, I'm always just like picking like, where do I actually want to run? And typically I like running on trails, even though I get faster times running in the streets, but
yeah, naturally. Yeah. But, I mean, you're a West Coast boy though. You gotta hit the trails. That's just what you do. Right?
Yeah, I know. And I feel like as I get older, that's probably what I'm going to like stick to is just like, you know, being a trail runner, and then I can make an excuse for not going very fast.
I feel the same way. That's why I do like ultra long distance stuff. Cause I'm like, oh, I can do it really slow. And no one's like, oh, your time was shitty on that. Like, 50 miler. Everyone's like, you ran 50 miles and you're like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's a glorified walk, but sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, exactly.
Same idea.
Everybody sweats. They sweat the mileage, not necessarily the time.
Exactly. Okay,
well, in that same vein, what's your opinion on running with music as opposed to running without music? Because I feel like that's a touchy subject with a lot of runners.
Yeah, I ebb and flow. Like I'll go through like literally like 2 years where I never run with music, and then I'll run with it for like 6 months, something like that. Like I think it really depends. And also I hate having my phone with me, but I basically made a deal with my partner. Like I will not run without a way for you to contact me. Cause I just, I don't think it's appropriate. I don't have an Apple Watch. And so I think if I had an Apple Watch, I would probably not bring my phone. And so when I bring my phone, I don't know, for some reason, it always compels me to bring music. And so lately I've been running with music a lot more, but I think it's also like, it's where you're running. Like if I'm running right now, a lot of my runs are like from where I live in this like little town into the bigger city that is close to us. So it's like a 15K run. So like around 10 miles, and it's on like the side of a fairly busy road. So I don't like to have music blaring or anything when I'm on a road, but at the same time, like the noise of the cars gets really intense. And so I usually will throw my AirPods in just to like have something in there to protect me from the noise a bit. So I'll throw like a podcast on, or I actually listen to your podcast a lot when I run.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah. So I'm on both sides, but like whatever gets people out there to run, like I don't really I don't really care. Like if you're running and you're happy about it, then that's sweet.
No, I totally agree. And I know that there's a lot of people that say like you feel your body a little bit more when you don't have music and you can, control your breathing a little bit. But
Sure.
I've tried it both ways, and it just makes me not like running as much when I can't pretend like I'm in a movie scene or something like that.
Right. Yeah. You're like running through the forest. You're being chased or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I put like the Last of the Mohicans soundtrack on while I'm running through the forest.
I should try that. I saw this thing the other day. It was just this Instagram reel, and it was like this guy got his followers to make a playlist for him, and only the worst music. And so it was stuff like Enya and like all this like super slow music that just like Beethoven and stuff that just like, completely takes you out of it. And it was for like a 10-mile run. He was just like suffering through it.
Oh dang, that sucks.
Yeah, that would be rough.
Well, Chris, why don't you give me I have already kind of introduced you and what you do in the intro of this podcast. Why don't you give me just a little like elevator pitch of like what it is you do? Because I know you kind of wear a lot of hats.
Yeah. So when it comes to the film and photo space, I start every single YouTube video the exact same way, which is like I say, "What's up? I'm Chris Tejas. I'm a photographer and videographer. I'm based in Ontario, Canada. I mainly shoot portraits, events, weddings. If there's a person involved, I'm photographing them." That's my like shtick.
Yeah.
That's just easy to say. But what that doesn't really encompass is what I do on the filmmaking side. So on the photo side, which is sort of, I wouldn't say it's what I like doing necessarily more, but it's probably where I do find more joy in the stuff that I photograph. I do mostly weddings. And I love it. Like it's my first year actually doing weddings. Before this, I was doing a lot of portrait work, a lot of like corporate photography work and stuff like that. Like kind of everything, real estate, business, everything like that. And I found my way in with a really great group of people shooting weddings that are just so kind and amazing. So that's been my focus this season, and that'll probably continue to be my photo focus. Like portraits, events, weddings is kind of the thing now. On the filming side, though, I do a lot of interviews. So I'll do a lot of like corporate interview kind of stuff to pay the bills. And then for the more inspirational side of it all for me, the biggest thing that I've done recently is I finished a documentary, my first one, which I know you took the time to watch, which I really appreciate.
It was great, man.
Thank you. Yeah, that was crazy. That was doing like a doc on your own as like a one person band is a lot. But yeah, I think overall, like, my biggest thing is like I'm just searching for meaning, I think, in a lot of the stuff I do. So if I'm hearing a cool story, if I'm seeing something inspiring, or like something makes me think a different way or makes me feel uncomfortable, like I want to explore that. And I think that partly comes from my kind of spiritual background, that I'm just really curious. And so that I think is going to be my focus moving forward with my filmmaking, is like maybe not pure documentary, but really trying to focus in on personal stories.
Trying to tell a story is so much, I feel like, more fulfilling than just trying to make a pretty looking image, And I think a lot of filmmakers find themselves in that space where it's just like, once you kind of know like the basics of how to make a good looking image, it's way more about like trying to make something that actually has impact,
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like for me, I'm going to throw out some names here that I'm not comparing myself to because I'm not there, but like, I'm more on the side of like a Casey Neistat than I am on the side of like a Deakins kind of thing. Cinematography to me matters only insofar as telling my story appropriately. And if I feel like me setting up a shot is getting in the way of telling the story I want to tell, then I never worry about it. Like, especially with so much run and gun stuff that I do, where like, it's just not possible. Like, I mean, in this documentary, there was so much out of my control that I was just like, all I can do is point a camera at the right things at the right time and hope for the best.
Well, I mean, I still think that you created a really nice to look at film still, even with like the constraints that you had. But I'm curious, like, where did you get your start? Because like, I know that you started in photography, right? Or was it the other way around?
Yeah. So like, I think like most people, like you, me, a lot of people that you've talked to, like I started when I was young, picked up a camera. For me, it was like I filmed skateboarding and we made like short films like in high school. In terms of photography, I bought my first camera. I remember I bought it off eBay. I actually found it at my mom's place a little while ago. It was a Minolta X370, a film camera. And that was like my first camera. And I was just in the darkroom like all of high school, basically. I wasn't particularly good at it, I don't think. Like, I think I was really curious about it. But right away, I found that my eye was drawn to certain things that like inevitably kind of brought me into the realm of like street photography. Like I remember really distinctly taking there's certain photographs that stand out in my mind from when I was that age that like I felt so compelled by and I couldn't say why. And I look back on it now and I'm like, I think about those photos and I don't have any of them anymore, unfortunately, but they're just so like evocative of what was happening. And technically they weren't really great photos, but I was just so compelled by what I was seeing in front of me, whether it was like photographing somebody I knew or somebody on the street or something like that. And I didn't even really know what street photography was at that point. It was just sort of like where I was falling towards. But on the filming side, like, you know, the other half of my life in school was just spent in our like comtech room, which is basically where we just made films and like learning editing and all that stuff. So it started really early. And then I basically put it all aside after high school and didn't touch it again until pretty much COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was a good 15 years almost. Like I think when I was like 30 is when I picked up a camera again.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I was going to say that's something that I feel like I can see in your work is that like, you know, you're saying that like you naturally shifted towards street photography. And I feel like you think that that's because it's, you know, something that you say in the intro of your videos, like you like photographing people, you know? And I feel like that's definitely something that I can see with you is that like, you know, even though like your documentary and then all of your photography work is that it's always got a person in it. And I can definitely relate with that too, because I'm not a photographer by any means, but when I was really into photography, I tried the whole landscape stuff, you know, I tried, you know, doing stuff without people in it, but like, I always just came back to like, it always just adds a little more to a photo if there's an expression of a person in it, you know?
Yeah. I think like, you know, one side of me wants to be like, well, if I was really good at landscape photography, I wouldn't need to put people in it. Like I would be able to tell a compelling story without it. But so often I just find, and you may be the same way, that I'm like, I'm more compelled to just go for a hike and like not bring my camera and like I don't and kind of absorb what's around me, you know, myself and kind of just keep it for myself. I've tried over and over. Like I was just in Alberta and Alberta is gorgeous, like so many beautiful places you could go. And I was just like not compelled by the idea of taking a camera and going and shooting landscapes. But then, you know, when I was in downtown Calgary, like I definitely wanted a camera around me, even for just a few snaps just to have. And I think, I mean, I've definitely tried all that. And I do even have a project that I'm doing right now that is absolutely not related to people, basically just to try and get better at it.
Do you have any like photographers that you are kind of like your North Star as far as like you want to not necessarily like have their style, but you want to like do something on their level at some point?
Yeah, I think there's a few. Like I'm really bad with remembering like names. I'm like looking around right now. I'm like, okay, well, there's some photography books that I like. One that jumps out to me right away is this guy, Shane Balkowicz. So he's based in North Dakota and he does all tintype style of photographs. And so he's doing like these incredible photographs. And the main thing he's working on right now is several volumes of photos of Indigenous peoples. And so he does them all in his studio using like the traditional tintype photography that you would have. What's so cool about it is it's like a lot of Indigenous folks would have seen photos of their grandparents or great grandparents photographed in this way. And so what he's doing is basically offering his studio up for free to anyone of Indigenous descent who wants to come and get photographed. And he's making this huge anthology of work. And it's so beautiful and it's so intentional. And it's so different from the ways people have done it in the past. That feels very much like you're like trying to take from the Indigenous story. Like you're sort of like, you know, for lack of a better way of saying it, like look at these savages or something. You know, and purposely trying to make them seem more antiquated or more simple than they really were. He's not doing that at all. Like he's not telling them what to wear. He's not telling them how to pose. He's saying, bring what you want to wear. If you want to wear jeans and a t-shirt, great. If you want to wear full regalia, great. And so he's putting together this incredible body of work. And I think it's just, he's giving so much back to the Indigenous community, and he's not a part of it either, but he's been embraced by it, which I think is also cool. And it shows there's a level of community that can be built if you're coming in with good intentions. And so, yeah, I mean, stuff like his is just so incredible. And if I could have work that is that meaningful and is doing that much to like repair, I think that would be really powerful and cool.
Yeah. Dude, I'm going to have to check him out. Have you Have you heard of Joey Lawrence? He's another Canadian photographer.
I don't know.
Well, he got kind of famous for like, he shot, I think, the Twilight, like the Twilight poster photo. But
Okay.
he does similar work, but in places like Ethiopia and Indonesia, where he like,
Oh, cool.
I think he got really good, like really early in his career. He would like take like a phase 1 camera with one of his friends, and he would go out into like in Ethiopia to like the most crazy off the trail places where like these indigenous tribes live. And he would take like these beautiful portraits of them with a phase 1 and like a huge
Wow.
octobank.
Cool.
And then like, yeah, like his stuff is just insane. And he like all of his craziest work is all just like self-funded, he just like,
Yeah.
he just puts himself in these crazy situations. I think he went to Kurdistan when they were having like the big conflict there, and he shot these amazing portraits of like the female Kurdish soldiers, and it was just like, he's one of my favorites. And I'm just like, man, like, I don't know, like I was a doofus when I was 20 and he was doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Like
That's amazing. That's so cool. I'll have to check him out. Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah. I'll have to send you one of the videos that he did, because he'll like post like these crazy GoPro vlogs that he did like back in like the early 2000s or like the mid 2010s. But
Man, that was such a juicy time for like, I don't want to say vlogs, but just like nobody cared what things looked like as long as it was compelling. And like, that was so cool. That was such a special time. And like, just like I know you've said this in the past, but like I've been obsessed with YouTube since it started. Like, I remember like super early, like who were some of your like really early people that you loved to watch on YouTube, whether it was filmmaking or not? Like, do you have anybody that you like?
Philip Bloom was on Vimeo, but like before he was on YouTube, but I watched him a lot on Vimeo. I watched like, Film Riot, Zach King from Final Cut King, which is what his channel was called back then.
Yeah.
Watched a lot of his stuff. It's weird because like you probably feel this too, but like I've been on YouTube for such a long time, and it's crazy seeing so many people just like rise up so quickly and then just become like these household names,
Yeah. And I mean, that's from the outside looking in for me, because I only started on YouTube like 10 months ago. So it's a very new endeavor for me, but I've definitely seen, I also don't pay much attention to it, to be honest. Like I've still never seen a single video by Mr. Beast or like, people.
You're
like,
not missing out.
I don't think so. Like, I don't think it's for me, but there's so many people like that where like they're huge and I'm like, I don't even know that name. And then I find out like, oh, they have like 30 million subscribers or something.
Yeah.
Like, and also my stepson watches all this stuff where I'm like it's just like Minecraft videos and stuff. And you're like, oh, these 14-year-old creators have like 55 million or whatever it is, like something insane, right? And you're like, how did you get 12 million subscribers as a 14-year-old?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy world that we're living in. What are some of like the biggest takeaways? Because I watched your full-length documentary and it was a crazy story, but what are your biggest takeaways from filming a full length? And I guess how long did that whole production take?
Yeah, so maybe I'll give you a little, like I'll give everyone a background on the story, but basically the story has kind of two diverging paths where we're looking at Christy Goss, who's an ultramarathon runner, and she's running a 200-mile race in Ohio, which is insane on its own. And then the kind of added complexity to that is that she's a living organ donor. So she gave her kidney to her brother a few years ago. And this is the longest race she's done since giving her kidney. So we also did a whole bunch of filming with a couple of different people. One guy who is currently awaiting a kidney transplant. He's trying to find a kidney transplant and he's about to go on dialysis. And another woman who received a kidney transplant last year, or earlier this year rather, as well as a few doctors and all that kind of stuff. So the story, the way that we sort of envisioned it, was about trying to show that you can do something incredibly selfless, like give up a kidney, while still being able to perform at a really high level. And you don't have to say, like, something like, especially kidney donorship now is so safe compared to what it was, 10, 15 years ago. Even then it was safe, relatively speaking. But it's just so much more accessible. So our goal with it was to firstly, to try and get Eric, this guy who's awaiting a kidney, try and find him a donor. We're trying to get people to sign their donor cards, or at very least just know more about the process and show that you can do this really powerful, beautiful thing for somebody while still achieving your own goals. And more than anything, like, show the dichotomy between, like, running an ultramarathon is inherently like a very selfish act. And I don't use the word selfish in like a negative way, but it's just like, it's all about you. Everyone is there for you. Your whole crew is there for you. Everyone just wants to see you achieve this goal.
Yeah.
And the juxtaposition between that and like doing something that is absolutely not for you, which is giving this kidney, right? And for me, that's where the tension kind of lies. And Christy, who's the main subject of the documentary, is just like, I mean, the more I've gotten to know her over the past year or two, she just gets infinitely more complex and like, just, she's a total character. But it was also just such a simple, straightforward thing to her. She's like, my brother needs this. I'm going to do it. 200-mile race, I'm going to run it. Like there's just such a simplicity to the way she like sees things in some levels. So the whole documentary itself took place we first started talking this previous January, so almost a year ago. Mm-hmm. The race itself was in April. And so we did some filming up to that point, filming with some doctors, doing interviews, filming with Christy to get a sense of where she was at, where her head was at, to do some like prep stuff. And then we went right into the filming of the actual documentary. So I remember that was a crazy couple of weeks, because I think what ended up happening was I went to a conference in my hometown that I was helping with. There's this photo conference that we did here called Canada Photo Summit, and I was shooting BTS for it. And then the night of the after party of that, I drove to Ohio because the next morning was the race. So the race started at 6 a.m. the next day. So I basically drove until 1 a.m, slept for a few hours, and the race started, and I was like, okay, we're filming. Like, we go from there.
Yeah.
And then I finished filming and basically got back and went immediately on a trip to Europe. And so it was a really condensed, intense experience. But the whole thing itself, like the filming and all of that was, the only thing I can really say is like, if you're going to do something like this, you just have to be okay with chaos.
Yeah.
And with not having things go the way you want them to go, because not only, and I talk about this in the film a little bit, but not only was I like the person there filming everything, but I was also, she only had 2 people crewing for her. It was her husband and her son, and they did an amazing job, but they've never run before. They've never done an ultra or anything like that. So I was sort of like the de facto expert. So I was the one who was also kind of crewing. And then throughout the 200-mile race, I ran 50 miles with her. So a lot of times I was just putting the camera down and being like, what do you need? How can I help?
Yeah.
So I guess if I were to do it again, I would probably say like, if you really want to get the most compelling content, like you really do have to just be a fly on the wall. Mm-hmm. And you really do have to be able to remove yourself. And that comes with, in certain types of documentaries, that comes with some ethical quandaries. Like people talk about like, you're photographing the child about to be, eaten by a scavenger bird in the middle of a war zone. Go help the child. Like people talk about that a lot. And I understand that. But both are kind of necessary for that story to be told properly. So the whole process itself of actually filming was really, really complicated. And I walked away with probably a quarter of the footage I wanted. I would love if there was more footage of her running, more. I wanted cool drone shots. I wanted all the stuff that makes like a cinematic documentary. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't there to have. I couldn't do it all. I couldn't like be filming and running and crewing and flying a drone up in the air and driving between all these spots at the same time. It just wasn't possible. So for anyone who is going into an endeavor, like I think just building a team around you if you can is super helpful. And if you can't, just recognizing, like I went into this with the full recognition that it's probably not going to go exactly how I want it to. And I'm definitely not going to be able to get as much as I want out of this. And so I guess probably if I had storyboarded a bit more, but storyboarding a documentary is kind of impossible in its own way. So point the camera at the right places at the right time, I guess, is the big takeaway.
That's great, man. Do you think that I'm sure, you kind of were saying that like being a runner yourself, the subject matter, it also like is kind of, it hits close to home to you as well. Do you think that kind of helped be able to tell the story better because you knew like just how intense of a feat it was going to be to run 200 miles, Yeah,
I think with anything like that, you have to be, at very least, you have to be curious.
Yeah.
Like if you're making a documentary about something you don't care about, it's just not going to, it's not going to work. And like, this is my first doc. I am not an expert, but what I can say for sure is like, if I didn't know what I know about running and about these ultra events, it would not, you're right. It would not be as compelling of a story because I just wouldn't know how to craft it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to have firsthand experience, but I think doing a lot of research, asking a lot of questions, and that's where doing like that pre-production can really come in handy. Like I think, let's say I hadn't done something like this before, I would probably be trying to go to some of these ultra races and just watching and volunteering and helping to see what it looked like so that I could understand what kind of toll it was taking on people. And then watching lots of other, like there's so many good ultra docs out there.
Yeah.
So watching that kind of stuff. But for me, like the other side of it, the organ donation, like I have no experience with that.
Yeah.
The only thing I really have is like, I'm a pretty like bleeding heart. like I want people to be healthy and happy and okay. And that really does matter to me too. So
getting into like the technical aspect, you told me that you kind of filmed it on a few different cameras, and that was something that I was gonna bring up a little bit because I mean I like talking about gear, but
100%.
Like so first I guess like which cameras do you shoot it on, and then over the course of your career, what have been the cameras that you've liked the least? Because I know that like you've kind of tried a lot.
Yeah, I've been all over the place. Like I'm pretty good about buying and selling used gear, so I've tried a lot of stuff. Yeah. Not as much as you have, but definitely a lot. And I also worked at a camera store for a while, so I would get really good deals, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The dock itself, I shot on the Fuji X-H2S, the Panasonic S5 2X, and the Fuji X-T4 for a little bit of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I could be wrong about this. I feel like there's a couple of random clips from a Canon R5 as well.
Okay.
So it was like everything but Sony and Nikon, basically.
Yeah.
And only because I didn't have those. If I had them and I needed to use them, I would. So yeah, it was all over the place. It did, despite what people say, like, yes, you can push and pull files however you want, but like it doesn't make it impossible. It just makes grading more complicated. And I can look at those and I can know for sure. I mean, yeah, because I was filming, but I think regardless, like every system has a bit of a look, and then you put your blend on top of that. Largely that's at least how I feel, because I'm not super good at color grading. And so like ultimately I wouldn't recommend people do it that way, but those are just the cameras I had access to, and like not getting too caught up in the idea that like, oh, okay, I want to do this thing. Well, I should rent the FX3 because that's the best video camera for me. But then I have to rent that 10 different times over a year. Like I was just like, what do I have? And that's where that sort of like I said, like that Casey Neistat side where I'm just like, just get the shot, shot, do the interesting thing. In terms of cameras that I've had in the past that I haven't really liked, it's hard because like, I mean, there's a couple of like really budget ones that were just like pretty bad. Like the Fuji X-T100 is like this little entry level photo camera that's just like, what's cool about it is unlike all the other cameras from them, it has a Bayer sensor instead of the X-Trans sensor. Okay. So it's a bit of a different look, but it was just functionally like a nightmare, and it was just not good. On a video side, you know, I shot with the A7 IV for a while. The one I had like crazy overheating problems. Even with the new firmware, I know what everybody says, but like I would just get a lot of problems with it. Yeah. So that was tough. The Lumix S5 2X, I had some issues with photo. And so I think I know what the solve is for this now, because my buddy Chris was mentioning it to me. But one of the issues with it is its exposure preview. When you pop into photo mode and you put on exposure preview, if you half press your shutter to get autofocus, it will show you a preview of what it thinks the correct exposure is, rather than showing you what your actual exposure looks like. So I don't know if you have that camera, so I don't know if this is something you can like test and find out for me, but
I mean, I'll be honest, I've shot photos on this thing maybe 3 times. And they've only just been for like thumbnails, but
so I was using it for like a lot of weddings this year, and the problem was, so you half press your shutter, it shows you exposure preview of what it thinks it should be, rather than what it actually looks like. So then you think you're properly exposed, you take the photo, and then you see that it's like dark.
Okay.
Or it's light, or it's whatever. And so it's not actually giving you a true exposure preview. It's previewing you like what it thinks it should be. So it makes no sense. You might as well be shooting on a DSLR at that point, because you're not actually getting valuable information out of that exposure preview. I apparently there's a fix to it, and my buddy with a Leica said it's the same issue, and because Leica and Lumix are so close in terms of operating systems, kind of makes sense. But that was a tough one. So I ended up giving up that camera because to a guy who mainly shoots video, because I was just like, I did 3 weddings on one weekend, and I was like, I'm going to pull my hair out because I kept missing exposure. And so there is a fix, I've been told. So I don't want to like throw Lumix under the bus here, especially because I know so many Lumix shooters watch this and I don't want to get in trouble. I love Lumix, I promise. It just, for me, it was like a better solution came about where my buddy wanted to swap for an R5.
Like I would guess that the majority of people that shoot Lumix are mostly video people. Like I know that there's a lot of Scandinavians and people in Asia that use a Lumix camera for their photography, but I feel like broadly speaking, it's not necessarily the photographer's first choice.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about YouTube as well, because you started a YouTube channel. I don't know how long ago now. Like,
I think
it was a couple of years.
No, it was like end of January. So it's been like 2
Oh,
months.
really? Has your perspective changed after like your perspective on YouTube? Like, how has it changed after starting your own channel?
I watch less of it now, for sure.
Yeah.
Like I think I consume less of it, and I'm more picky about what I watch. But not in the sense where I'm like, I look at stuff where I'm like, oh, this is trash or something like that. I'm more picky about it because I have less time and I'm creating more stuff now. And so I liken it to the same way that I think about restaurants. If you really want a restaurant to succeed, you have to go to it all the time. Like they need consistent business. So my partner and I, we have like 4 or 5 restaurants are the ones we like, and we cycle through those when we go out, more or less. We don't try a lot of new places very often, or we might try them occasionally, but I think of creators on YouTube space the same way. Like the best thing I can do is subscribe and be consistent and watch their videos and watch through them all. And like if I don't have time, if I see it's a 14-minute video and I don't have time to watch that, I probably opt out, and then I watch it when I have time. I think there's a bunch of people I subscribe to, but there's probably like 10 or 20 where I'm like, I watch every single one of their videos. I watch it from start to end. I'm pretty bad about remembering to like and comment and stuff, to be honest. So I have a lot of, and I don't know if you find this, but like, even when I'm doing my videos and I'm like, hey, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff we say, like, I get it. I get why people don't. To think of doing it, like, I just don't think of it. And in a way, if somebody's actively thinking about liking and subscribing and stuff, that means one of two things. Either I prompted them to do it and they did it, or maybe they're not as engaged. Like if they get to the end of a video and they like loved every second of it and they're engaged, like, I don't blame them for not thinking like, oh, I should go now and like, and like, usually they just watch another of your videos, which I would rather anyways, ultimately.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I think my perspective on it is just like, I have a lot of respect for people that can do it consistently. And I've been trying really hard. Like I think I'm close to 70 videos. And of varying levels of quality. And that was something too. Like when I first started, I was like, I want every video to look really good, and I really want to like put the time in, like, and then I realized like, it's just like, at first, at least, I think it's kind of just a numbers game. And your videos will get better as you just get more comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense to you? Like, you've done it forever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that you've actually been like really consistent with your YouTube channel. And like I personally love the videos that you post where you're just like, you know, like ranting about a certain subject or whatever. Like I love watching those videos. Those are just like, cause like a lot of the times, like I share the same sentiment, you know, like, I think the one that you did about, I don't know, like the angry old white guys that always comment on, you know, different camera, like those things was like, that is so true. It always is those type of people leaving those type of comments.
You know, what's funny was like the comments on that video were mostly from angry old white guys that were upset at me. But also like people being like, why do you have to bring race into it? And I'm like, hold on. Like I'm recognizing that there's a trend here, and I'm bringing it up because every single one of my friends who doesn't look like me, who is of a different ethnicity, sees it too. And it's a problem for them. Like I know, I mentioned this in one of my comments back, because I actually jumped into the comments for that video. I was like, I know like BIPOC, you know, producers, and like, because I work in film a little bit too. Like I know grips, I know all these people that work in this industry that actively get passed up because of other people in the industry who are racist. So like, I'm gonna mention it. I'm gonna say something when I feel like it is. When it is relative to the conversation. So but I'm on two sides of making those videos because like I kind of like making them, but I also don't want to be negative. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a pretty happy guy, and so I will talk about things that you know, if I think people are doing something wrong and I feel compelled to talk about it, I will. But generally speaking, I want my channel to be pretty positive. So
No, and I totally agree. But at the same time, I do think that they gravitate towards people that have like not just strong opinions, but like stick with their opinions, you know, like even if they're not super popular. So I respect that a lot because like I'm not, you know, I always like, you know, I stay on the sidelines when it comes to a lot of, you know, drama on YouTube. Like I never really like, you know, jump on it. But I do respect people that just, you know, even if they have an opinion that I'm not 100% on board with, it's like, well, I'm glad that you're at least sticking to your guns, you know, and you're not like just, you know, like being like a wishy-washy person. But
yeah. You know, it was funny, that video, when I did that, it came out like 3 days before Gerald's video all about like things have to change in the camera industry.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was so funny that like I put that out because I was having conversations with some of my friends that are on YouTube, and they were all saying the same thing. Like, people are like ripping into us about all this different stuff, and like I don't understand why. Like, we're just making camera reviews, like give us a break.
Yeah.
And so I put that out, and then like 3 days later, like the camera world blows up because Gerald puts out this like super intense video. Yeah, it was funny timing. So it like I definitely got it was a weird amount of big YouTubers like found that video and just commented and were saying stuff, and I was like, huh.
Yeah.
I guess I struck a chord.
Yeah, seriously. You've been like pretty consistent on your channel from my perspective. Like you post at least a couple times a month, it seems. What are your goals for your YouTube channel, if you have any?
Yeah. A lot of people, I don't know if this might not be a very popular opinion, but like a lot of people start it because they're like, I just want to make stuff and I want to do interesting things. And like, that was not me. I was like, this is a business. I want to treat this like a business. I'm still going to make stuff that I like and things that I think are interesting, but my goal is to get monetized. My goal is to make money off of it. I want to subsidize my life with it. YouTube AdSense isn't going to be how that happens. I've recognized that since getting monetized. And I kind of knew that, but I wanted that. And I also wanted to create a certain level of legitimacy around myself so that when companies or people wanted to hire me for something, whether it be for photo or video work, they could look at something and see like this breadth and depth of content. And if they resonate with it, they're going to resonate with me because I am very much myself in my videos. Yeah. And so I wanted to create like a legitimate sort of like funnel for people to go through where they could say like, okay, I get what this person's about, and they seem to be some level of knowledgeable on stuff. I'd love to pay at least a portion of my bills with YouTube. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, like I have a few friends who are, you know, like on the cusp of, you know, getting monetized, and, you know, they're like, oh man, I can't wait until I'm monetized. It's like, dude, it's like, you got to think about everything else before you think about YouTube AdSense, because it's going to take years for it to like be anything. And I've said this before, but like my 156,000 subscriber YouTube channel, I get maybe $300 a month from the Google AdSense, which I know it's like, it's different in different niches, but like if you're in the camera world, you could probably like, unless you're, you know, getting crazy amounts of views on every single video, but like, it's really not that much. You have to monetize in like so many different ways to make it worth it. But yeah, I mean, like I can definitely see it working out for you. I feel like being consistent with YouTube was one of the hardest things. Sure. You know, it's not just about making good videos, but like if you stop posting for 3 months, you know, and then you try to post another video, it could be just, you know, just be dead on arrival, you know? Yeah.
Oh, that dude. And even if you are posting consistently, you can still like tank. Like I put it like this past month, I put out a few videos that were hitting like for my channel, decent numbers, like a few thousand, like 2,000 views, something like that, decent engagement. And then I put out another one and it's at like 60 views. And I'm like, okay, like, I guess that's that. Like, I do kind of fundamentally know what's different about that video, but like it shows that people aren't really along for the ride yet, if you know what I mean. Like people are coming for a certain purpose, and maybe, those 60 views are people who are there for the ride. But like I think today I checked just before we came on, just because I figured we'd talk about this. I like just hit 1,800 subscribers today. Yeah. And of those 1,800, like, okay, so 60 diehards, which is cool. Like that's really cool. That's amazing. But like they're only here insofar as they're not quite here for me yet, if that makes sense. So
yeah, that's kind of how I feel about my second channel. So everyone watching here on Nigel Bajos too, I feel like this is like my core audience that I can kind of, be a little bit more raw with. And my bigger channel is just people are passively watching me, I think.
Sure.
Like, maybe they found me when I blew up in 2020 from like that lighting video, but maybe they don't care about, a little more nuanced aspects of the filmmaking process. So I totally get that. And it is kind of like that number next to your name is really, it helps you get brand deals, but it doesn't necessarily equate to viewership and I guess fans, I guess.
Yeah. Do you find like, because that lighting video was, I mean, it exploded.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. I'm sure it helped the channel huge.
Yeah.
But like, do you find to a certain degree, it's like people went there they got what they wanted out of it. Mm-hmm. And then like, that's what they wanted. And like, they didn't necessarily go for Nigel. They went for what you offered. And some of them are going to stick around. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how I found your channel too. And like, I stuck around because I was like, I like this dude. I like what he's about. He's obviously into skateboarding. So sick.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to follow along. But like a lot of people probably were just like, oh, I got the information I needed. Like I can probably say, like, I can say with pretty strong conviction that if I look at my channel now, there's one video that basically got me monetized, and it's about iPad editing. Like, it's not even about stuff I care about, but it's at like 60 something thousand views. It got me like the bulk of my subscribers, at that point when it came out, and it basically pushed me over that hump. But I know that anyone who subscribed because of that video is going to be very disappointed by the stuff I'm making. So like, it's not actually like having a video that blows up about, I mean, for you about lighting, that's actually kind of cool because that's something you like. But having a channel blow up over a video that actually doesn't really resonate with you or what you are going to continue to do, not that it's detrimental, but it doesn't help necessarily.
Yeah, I think that like a lot of people that found my channel and subscribed to me, especially during 2020, were people that were trying, like I got a lot of, comments from people who are starting their own, starting to do more videos about real estate, talking about real estate. And it's like these real estate agents wanting to know how to make their video look good. Or I got some professors at colleges, were actually emailing me saying, hey, like I had to switch to doing everything online. I didn't know how to make my shot look good. You helped me. And so it's like those type of people, I don't imagine are going to stick around and watch me talk about cinema lenses. You know what I mean? They might still be subscribed to me, which is sick, but I don't like, they're very either passive or just completely non-active, viewers on my channel. And there is part of me, and I talked to Zach Mayfield about this a little bit too, where it's just like, I almost wish I would have not gone viral with that type of video. I wish I would have like gone viral with something that was very niched to like my specific interests and not so broad, because I think that video was a pretty broad, like anybody could watch it and get something out of it. Or it's like, I almost wish that like one of my camera videos or something blew up instead, so that people that were into cameras would be following me instead of people that, wanting to know how to make their Zoom call look better. Yeah.
What did Zach have to say about that? Like, did he share that sentiment? Because he said a couple of things like blow up too.
Yeah, like I think he blew up because of a YouTube short that was like linked to a different video. And so he blew up from a YouTube short and gained like 50,000 subscribers. And so he was saying that like, this is kind of weird that like almost all my subscribers have come from a YouTube short that I made. It was about, or that he made about, I don't know, it's like some live streamer. I'm not into live streaming, so I don't really know who he was talking about. Yeah, because
he made a video for a live streamer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of how he blew up. And I kind of feel like, he kind of shares the same sentiment with me. It's like making content about cameras for the camera industry is kind of hard.
I want to circle back to that, but did I tell you that I made a video for Zach? Have I told you about this?
Yeah, wait, yeah, because you wanted to have him in one of your videos or something like that.
Yeah, so I basically I made a video for him. It's like 4 minutes. It's just stupid. Yeah. It's just like a silly little joke video, but I made it for him and I sent it to him. Yeah, and that was like one of the more nerve-wracking things I've ever done, because it's unlisted, and I just like I could at that point my channel was even smaller than it is now, and so I was like most people, like when you first start, like you're checking things more constantly, but because it was an unlisted video, I could see like the second he saw it, cause he's the only person who had the link to it. And it was like a very nerve wracking experience. But he was very sweet about it, but he seems like the best, but yeah, I mean, I think one of the hardest parts about being in the camera space is like, not only does your content have to be valuable, but like everything does to a certain degree have to look good. Like it doesn't have to look perfect, but like people won't take you as seriously if your video doesn't look as good. And like, maybe that's a good thing, but also you could be somebody who's like, who knows everything about photography and doesn't give a shit about video. And you could put a bunch of content that's super valuable, but your video doesn't look good. And people will be like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But you're like, this person's been taking photos for 40 years and they're like published in magazines, all this stuff. Like, it's a weird space to be in, because I think if you can make something look good on YouTube, people assume you know what you're talking about. It's not always the case, and vice versa too.
No, I totally agree. And it's like, you lose credibility if your stuff that you're taught, like if your stuff doesn't look good, and if you're trying to teach people how to make stuff look good and your stuff doesn't look good itself. And so it's like, it's very like different than a lot of niches. Cause like if I was, I did start like a little skateboarding vlog channel, and I'm filming it on like a little pocket camera from 2009, it's like no one cares.
That's so awesome.
But like, I don't know if you, do you watch Matt Day, his YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Did you watch that?
His stuff.
Yeah, that interview that he did with Matt Price. Matt Price is one of my favorite skate photographers, and it's just like, maybe some people watching, like that, webcam footage or whatever, they wouldn't think that he knows what he's talking about. But like Matt Price is like, I would watch him talk for like hours. You know what I mean?
100%.
But it's like, new photographers, they might, take somebody else more seriously if they have, a softbox with, super moody lighting, and they, are saying essentially the same thing, but I would rather hear it from Matt Price. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, your like acumen, your depth of knowledge should outweigh everything on a platform like YouTube, where it's really, so much of it is about knowledge. Something I find really hard, and I'm sure you've dealt with this in the past. It seems like you've kind of solved this equation for yourself, but like, I do not have a dedicated space to do YouTube. So like I set up and break down my stuff for every single video. I might do like, I might batch some videos, but I've found usually the videos I batch don't do as well, because I'm probably not, to be honest, I'm probably not taking the time I should, because I know people who are really good at batching. I'm just not.
Same.
So yeah, like I look at my setup and I'm like, I like the way my videos look. They're fine, but like, I would much rather have like a proper studio setup where I can control everything. And like, like I just watched like Matt Diavella has like a new channel that he put out a while ago, and he did a whole thing about his like, it was such a great video about how he set up his office. Yeah. And I was like so jealous, because I'm like, I'm in my living room and there's a Christmas tree. Like there's no, I think of like, oh, like somebody's gonna know when I film this video, there's a Christmas tree in the background, stuff like that. I know. Right?
That's always like the hard part about filming during Christmas time, is that like it's a dated video now. It's like, everybody knows that like, you filmed this in December or whatever. But have
you found like having like, because now you have like this really beautiful little setup, like this office, like how does that change things for you?
It's definitely made it easier for me to create content. I definitely think that it can get a little old if every single video is in the same space, and maybe that's people who watch any other filmmaking channel where it's just like they have a set. I don't have any beef with people that do that, but I don't like my videos looking exactly the same every single video. I want there to be something different in every video. This office I'll probably have for another 10 months, but my wife and I are probably going to be moving like next fall, so I'm going to get the most I can out of this little office space. But it's definitely nice having a place that's like strictly just for working, for sure.
Yeah. And also like, it must be nice too to just like close the door and be like, I don't have to look at all my gear. I don't have like all the cords. I don't have like, right now I'm like staring at like a bookshelf filled with all my gear, and I'm like, oh, it looks so chaotic and crazy. Like, there's something nice about having that disconnect. But are you guys like, are you staying in the Portland area? Do you know? Or like,
we're going to try to move like south of Portland, just because it's getting really expensive here. And like most of our friends live south of Portland too. And it's actually like, it's a pretty nice area. If you just go 20 minutes south, it's pretty gorgeous. We lived south of Portland a couple of years ago in a place called Oregon City. So we're going to try to move. I remember that. We're going to try to move down that way again. But
nice.
Yeah. Well, dude, I kind of wanted to ask you, and this is something that I feel like I don't talk about as much, but I kind of wanted to like ask you a little bit about your relationship with being an artist and making money with that art. Has that, like, I don't know, tainted your love for it at all, or do you kind of think of them as completely different? Like, do you compartmentalize it, I guess, with like, okay, I'm doing photography for work right now, and then I'll do, photography for myself in a different,
I do less photography for myself now.
Yeah.
Like I started into doing photography more or less full time a couple of years ago. And certainly I will say before that, I was out shooting more, like for myself, like a lot more street stuff. I also lived in Toronto, so it was easier. Like I could Toronto's huge and awesome. Like there's so much to do there when it comes to street photography. So that was easier. Now I live in like a town of 4,000 people. So it's a different kind of street photography. Yeah. But to the core of the question, like, I think it's awesome when you can make money off your art. I think it's super cool. To me, it doesn't taint it at all. I think it's cool. I think it's rad. Like if you can make money off of a camera, that's like the coolest thing to me. I still don't believe, like, I shot a wedding last night and I'm like, you see, like, they always talk in wedding photography circles, there's like the uncle with the DSLR, that's always there. Uncle Bob with his big 100 to 500 lens at a ceremony or something. And like, I would probably end up being that guy. Like, I just love doing it. So I think it's super cool. I do need to get back. Like, I do have some creative projects I want to do, and I do need to get back into that. But I've given myself some grace because, like, it was my first season shooting weddings. And I think between second shooting and my own, it was like 20 something weddings. So it was a lot. And, I've also got like, I've got my stepson and my partner and real life to deal with. And so like, I gave myself a lot of grace to not try and commit to like anything too ambitious with the creative stuff while also trying to do a documentary. So, no, I think making money off of your art is the goal for me.
That's kind of how, like, this whole YouTube thing, like the fact that I'm making money off of YouTube is still insane to me. Like, I talk to my parents a lot, cause like they weren't really like, they didn't really understand. I mean, they still don't really understand YouTube as, like how I make money, but like, it's crazy when I talk to them and it's like, yeah, I'm still doing YouTube. And they're just like, wow, I can't believe you're still making money from posting videos on on, a platform. I started it so long ago that like, I didn't start posting YouTube videos because I was going to make money off of them. I liked posting them. And I tell people all the time that like, if monetization was somehow, instantly no longer an option, I would still be posting YouTube videos just because I like doing it, Like when I first started posting, it was like when you said that you had a video on YouTube, it was almost like you were on TV, It's like, like you have a video on YouTube, like you're almost a celebrity, you're on TV, It's like, it's that same kind of feeling. And it's not like, I mean, I don't like attention, so to speak, but I do like the idea of like creating something and it being available to the entire world to see, I think that's kind of cool.
I think that's so sick. Like, especially when you start creating things that you're really proud of and things that you really put your heart and soul into. I think that's so special. Like this documentary, we're doing a couple of premieres of it at some cinemas. I need to figure out how to make a DCP package. Have you done that before? Do you know what that is?
No.
It's basically, that's the format that they use for cinemas. So that's what you have to export your files into. And I think with DaVinci Pro, you can, like the studio version, you can do it, but you can't do it with the free version. So I got to figure that out. But yeah, like after that, we're just going to put it on YouTube. And like, I love the idea of it being there for people to just take in. And like, we'll probably put it on Vimeo too, and just like have it places where people can absorb it. And hopefully, I don't know, if we can get people to sign their donor cards or whatever it gets people to do, it just gets them excited. I think that's rad. Like having everything at our fingertips is so cool. And I, like I mentioned, like I work in film a little bit too. And it's like, that's the total opposite. Like, it's like, you're a tiny little cog in this big system and you have no control over anything. You do what you're told, at least at my level. And then it goes where it goes and you basically just say goodbye to it. And this is the antithesis of that. And I think that's so cool.
Well, Chris, I have one more question for you. And it's just, if you were to go back to someone was your age when you started this whole, photography YouTube journey, what is like some advice that you would give with the experience that you have now?
Yeah. I mean, on the photography side, like I said, like I put down the camera for a long time. Yeah. I would say don't put the camera down. Like even if you need to put it down for a year or something, don't put it down forever. Like I think you will come back to it if you really love it, but it's all in the reps. And I feel like I missed out on a a decade, 15 years of getting better at photography, because like I put it down largely because I just like, I started to get interested in other things, which is cool.
Yeah.
But it was always there in the back of my mind, and I didn't listen to that. And it wasn't until I finally listened to that it really like opened up and blossomed for me. With YouTube, I would say like, I'm so new to it. Like, I'm 34 and I started a YouTube channel. That was inherently embarrassing. Like that felt really yucky and weird and like embarrassing to say and to tell people about. But I'm kind of getting over that. But what I will say is like the first time I wanted to start a YouTube channel was probably like 2010, and then the second time was like 2012, and then 20, like every couple of years I'd be like, I should do something. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to make stuff,
Yeah.
And so I would say anyone who's sort of on that fence, or like they're thinking about it, like, this sounds like such cliche advice, but like just do the thing, just make it. Like it's actually really fun.
Yeah.
And I stressed myself out super hard at first trying to do 2 videos a week, and I did that until I got to like 40 videos or something, and then I was just like up to like 1 a.m. editing and stuff, and it just wasn't good. So like I would say like do the thing, but like don't take it too seriously. Just make sure it's fun.
Totally agree. And I think that, yeah, it's like the best time to have started a YouTube channel is probably like, 5-10 years ago, but the second best time is right now.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Dude, and I think you've been like so inspirational to so many people, myself included. And like, there's just something unique about your channel that you don't see in a lot of other people's channels. And I think it comes through so much that you truly do. Like, I don't ever expect to see like I'm quitting YouTube video from you, because I think you know yourself well enough to know that like, you don't have to speak in those terms. Like you can give yourself space, and you can take that time. And I think we've all, like anyone watching this has probably gained so much from you, myself included. And like, I just think it's rad, man. I'm super, super thankful to be able to talk to you about this.
Dude, yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Yeah. Well, thanks, Chris. I think that's a great place to end it. I appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. I feel like it's been a long time coming. We've been like internet friends for a while now. So this is, I guess the first time that
I gotta get to Oregon now.
Yeah, dude, seriously, dude, there's some crazy trails here that we can run.
That'd be sick. That'd be super fun.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. See you, buddy.